think they are essentially a response to a crisis that we find ourselves in, and they are a call to action. Is what they are, a way of sort of focusing people and focusing institutions, focusing policy. They're basically, I mean, people think about sustainability. Often, what comes to mind is the environment, and certainly that is a core part of it. As we can see from the 17 Sustainable Development Goals through the United Nations, it's far broader than that, because to answer the question of why the climate is changing, why ecosystems and biodiversity are breaking down, why we've got these cascade effects that are going to knock on to wildfires and drought and hunger and conflict and food insecurity and water scarcity and habitat loss and all of this kind of thing. To answer that question, it's not just about emissions, it's about behavior, it's about the way the world works. And that comes into equity. You know, we in the global north are far more responsible by a long way for all of this than the global south. It's about things like strong institutions, it's about communication, it's about gender equality, it's about all kinds of stuff that contribute to this problem. So the Sustainable Development Goals attempt to kind of lay that out and say, these are all the areas, these are all the things that we've got to aim at if we want to achieve sustainable development, which is essentially meeting our own needs without compromising the needs of future generations. That's it in a nutshell. A lot of criticism. People say they're too vague, they're too this, they're too that. But essentially, the broadness of the Sustainable Development Goals really does help educators in a way, because it makes it easier to relate subject matter to these goals and to raise awareness around it. But I mean, within each of these goals, you do have sub-indicators, you've got targets and plans. And I think that the reason they're quite broad is because the world is complex, culturally, societally, economically. There's lots of variation in the way that countries are going to bring these things in. And so where some people see a vague approach, other people might see flexibility. So they're what we've got, and they're connected to everything from funding to policy to education. You know, it's going to be the thing that runs right through all of our lives. And so they may not be perfect, but as a common framework of understanding, I think they do pretty well. There is an urgency. There's no question. I mean, the government in the UK used the phrase "the race to net zero," as it's used more globally as well. Net zero emissions, and it is a race. It does feel frantic in a way. Will we get there? I mean, I'm absolutely optimistic that we will. But we're still in a stage where, you know, there's basic things like looking at, it's not just how we use energy and how we travel and things like that, but it's even things like, you know, who's doing our banking, who's got our pensions in the institution, what is our digital footprint, how are we, you know, how do we behave on a day-to-day basis in an organizational culture? What are we, what opportunities are we creating for action in the community? What is our relationship with the community like? Research and development, where's the focus? There's lots of questions to be asked, but when the phase of transformation to a sustainable institution begins with asking those questions, you know, there are steps to, you know, to simply sort of put it on the radar and start having these conversations is the beginning of it. And to then embrace and acknowledge that, okay, we have to play our part in this. I'd say that's definitely helped by a legal requirement, but you know, as with anything in business ethics, corporate social responsibility, all of these things, we always need to be beyond compliance. You know, compliance is not social responsibility, it's a legal responsibility. Social responsibility is to go well beyond that and become a change agent, transformative force for good in society. And this is where education institutions can really start to think about, instead of thinking reactively about this, what is it going to cost us? How are we going to do this? How are we going to build capacity? actually start to spot the opportunities it brings, to show leadership, to really achieve your mission of helping learners emerge into society as a positive force for change and for good, to really act in accordance with your capacity for change, wider change on a global level, as a leader, as a sharer of knowledge, as a collaborator. There's so many opportunities out there. And I think that if we start to shift from reactive to proactive thinking in this, I think people are going to start to really embrace what it can bring the world and what it can bring the institution.